Hello and welcome to Up Against the Brick Wall. My name is Lincoln Mullings. I am the Institutional Advancement Coordinator at the Men's Development Institute. According to Dr. William Polak, the way boys are brought up makes them hide all their natural, vulnerable, empathetic feelings behind a mask of masculinity. When they're most in pain, they can't reach out and ask for help because they're not allowed to. Today, I'm joined by Derek Cutter and Colin Ernst. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us on.
So when you hear Polak's quote, the last part where he says, when they're most in pain, they can't reach out and ask for help because they're not allowed to. I mean, what is your gut reaction to the fact that men are not allowed to talk about these topics?
Yeah, for me, that's really, it's hard to hear. I know that it's true, and I understand that feeling. For a long time, I was told I couldn't talk about my own struggles with mental illness. And I think that that's one of the hardest things about growing up in our society today as a man, is being told that to be a man, you can't talk about your feelings. But in reality, there's men need to talk about their feelings. Men need to seek help just as much as anybody.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's sad that these are the things that boys and men are getting told, and that they're forced to kind of hide behind this mask and not being able to talk about what they want to talk about, and being able to express their emotions in healthy ways rather than in toxic ways, which are often the ways that men are told they should express their emotions, through anger and violence, when talking would be a much easier and healthier way to go about approaching those situations.
Definitely, there is a cultural barrier where you don't really know whether or not it's okay for you to talk about, whether or not it's acceptable. But at the same time, when it comes to my experience with mental health, as well, before I really got into college and I really started to study the field, I wasn't really aware of how vast that can be, how hidden those struggles are for many people. So what kind of experiences have you guys had with mental health over the years?
Yeah, well, for me, I was first diagnosed with depression back in the 3rd grade. And then later on I was diagnosed with anxiety, which coupled with my depression. So for me, I've been struggling with this since I was a very young kid. It's involved a lot of individual therapy, a lot of group therapy, and sometimes even just being able to open up to friends. A few weeks back, I was having a really tough week here on campus, and I was in class and I just kind of was going through the motions, and somebody reached out to me and they're like, hey, you seemed off in class today, is everything okay? And I just was like, yeah, actually, I struggle with depression and anxiety, and it's really hard for me, and this has just been a really tough week. And to my surprise, my friend opened up in response to me, saying that he struggled with the same thing. We've been friends since we came to college, and we haven't ever talked about that yet. It's such an integral part of both of our lives. So I think that there's kind of that. Sometimes we don't even know how much other people are struggling, because even with our own struggles, we feel isolated, or we feel alone in those times of struggle.
Yeah, for me, I was diagnosed with anxiety after my first year of college, and I feel like that's a time where a lot of people do start to realize their mental struggles and kind of what they're going through. College is a very difficult time, and we're going through transitions and all that stuff. And I think one of the biggest things that I've kind of taken away through being able to talk about mental health and with both men and women is that validating other people's feelings is such an important thing. People, if you're having a really rough day and you just can't get out of bed and you feel like just today's not your day, that's an okay thing. That is something that happens. Your feelings are valid. You don't need to have a reason to be sad or to have these depressed feelings. It's part of what makes you you, and I think that being able to talk about that with other people and have those connections is huge, and hopefully something that we can spark more of.
And definitely, just like with our conversation here, we're realizing that mental health is becoming a larger topic in research, in social interactions, in politics even. But we're realizing that researchers have still found that only 1 in 10 men are actually willing to discuss mental health. Do you think that there's still a stigma that is attached to having a mental health issue?
I definitely think there's still a stigma. I think there's a stigma for anyone to have a mental health issue. But I think it's even stronger stigma against men. I feel like men were told from a very young age that we need to be independent, strong, and not to show emotion, not to show cracks or chinks in our armor. That's really what it comes down to. And in a lot of ways, that actually makes those problems worse. By ignoring these problems, by trying to kind of avoid them, we create a society where men aren't able to talk about that. And so even the men that would like to be able to talk about it sometimes feel like they can't because of the attitude or the culture that surrounds them. And it kind of, it's a self-perpetuating cycle of vicious, just kind of self-hatred, I feel like.
Yeah, going off of what you said about not knowing how to like approach the conversation, and I think that's something that holds a lot of men back into talking about mental health, because you don't know if you're in the right situation or how people are going to react, or if you were to openly disclose a diagnosis, is somebody going to call you a wimp or like whatever word, some derogatory term for your mental illness? And as vice president of Active Minds, which is a club on campus that combats mental health stigma, noticing that there are a lot more women that come to our discussions than there are men. So I'm definitely seeing this like real time. Men just still aren't quite there and comfortable, and I think it does definitely go to women too. It's not an easy topic for anybody to talk about, but I think men from that early age are told, be tough, rub dirt on it, don't talk about it, hide your feelings.
And one of the hardest things I think about trying to open up about my struggle with mental illness has been the fact that I don't want to be treated differently because of my mental illness. I don't want to be pitied. I don't want to be looked as though I am weak or I am less of a person, because I don't see myself as that. And granted, that's taken years and years of counseling to get me to the point where I could see that in myself. But at the same time, when I want to open up to somebody about having been diagnosed with depression or anxiety, it's not because I'm looking for their pity. It's because I'm just looking for maybe some understanding, but just kind of like this knowledge that, hey, this is something I struggle with. I'm still just as much a person as anybody who doesn't battle with these on a daily basis, but this is just a part of my life.
Yeah, I mean, like you talked about earlier, like those bad days. You have those bad days. Even people who don't have mental health issues, they have those days where they just need someone to support them. They need someone to show them that they are worth something. And I'm trying to figure out, like, how do you cope? Even as a man, as a regular person, how do you cope? Do you have, like, intimate conversations with your friends? Or do you talk to your family members? Do you feel as if there's a place where it is safe to have these conversations?
I mean, I think counseling is always the best option. I think especially for people who are starting to notice that they're not feeling the way they used to feel, I think taking that step and going into counseling is really important for your all-around well-being. And if you have those strong friend connections or family connections, great, and utilize those as the best you can. I know for me, I definitely went to family members and friends before any counseling, and I thought that was really helpful, and it just kind of was that extra push. And sometimes I think that's what people need, is to have that advocate that's like, go do it. Because it's hard. It is a difficult thing to get yourself to do.
Yeah, I think that one of the things Colin touched on there that's really important is being able to take that first step. And a big part of taking that first step is finding a way that you're comfortable talking about your mental struggles. So for some people, it's a lot easier to go to a counselor first. Some people, it's easier to go to family members first. For me, it was easier to go to a counselor first. So like I said, I was diagnosed back in the 3rd grade, and I started seeing a counselor very, very shortly afterwards. Seeing a counselor both in one-on-one and in group settings helped me to not only learn to open up to my feelings with an individual person, but then it also, as I started to move into group therapy more, it allowed me to figure out how I could open up myself and talk to other people, my peers, about my struggles. For me, going through counseling was a big part of finding that comfort level. Again, for some people, being able to go to a family member, a really close friend, makes them more comfortable. And now that I've been through all sorts of counseling, I am able to go just to my family and friends on a lot of things that struggle with today. So I think that, again, a big part of that first step is finding that area that you're comfortable opening up and starting a conversation.
Yeah, even that comfortability, and we kind of talked earlier about Polak and him saying that you're not allowed to ask for help, right? So we understand there's that culture barrier for asking for it. But where does that weakness come in? I mean, is there people is it media? Is it people around us? Why do we feel weak if we ask for help. And it's not only in mental health. We notice it in things like academics. We notice it with sports. We notice it with health conditions. Why do men, going and getting checkups more often? Where is this need for self-reliance coming from?
I think it comes down to a lot of people's belief that, if I work hard and I have a positive attitude, I can overcome anything. And there's certainly something to be said for self-perseverance and for self-motivation, all of that. But I do think that this idea that through my own willpower alone I can overcome anything, especially when we're talking about mental illness or mental struggles, can become really daunting. Because, a lot of people just say, oh, well, just put on a happy face, just change your frame of mind, be more positive. That's not always a possible thing. For a lot of people, just being able to move yourself into an era of positivity doesn't work, and even if it does, it's very superficial, and so it ends up collapsing in on itself at some point. So I think that, again, it's this idea, and it's not just forced on men, but I do think that it is more seen in the male community, but it's this idea that through my willpower, through my perseverance, I can accomplish anything, and if I need to seek help, then I'm not strong enough. That's not really the case, but that's how a lot of people tend to see it, I think.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think you hit it on the head right there.
Awesome. So what are some suggestions would you guys have for people who are experiencing some mental health issues?
I would say reach out to whatever that means for you as a man. Reach out to somebody that's close to you. Reach out to our counseling centers on campus or off campus if you feel more I understand there's that stigma of, is somebody going to see me walk into a walk-in Wednesday? And that's a scary thing for some people. But there's a ton of resources out there. There's countless online chats and hotlines that you can call, as well as countless clinics, even in the St. Cloud area, that are available to anybody. So, and on a wide range of topics. On anxiety and depression and eating disorders and anything. There's people who specialize in all these things, and being able to utilize those resources, I think, and knowing those resources is the most important thing.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to Up Against the Brick Wall. If you're experiencing mental health issues, please contact Counseling and Health Motions at either campus, whose information is found at the end of this video. And don't forget to talk it out.